Hey everyone, welcome to the Minds podcast. We're back. We took a little time off on the holiday. Bill's back. Hey Bill.
Hey,
Today we got
Brian.
Brian Edward, part of the Mythinformed Twitter account. So we got a nice white pill this last weekend. I didn't even know. So I got up in the morning. I'm like, getting on, looking at social or whatever. And I saw a message from Bill actually. And Bill's like, "Hey, Sean, are you back on?" I had no idea. Like a lot of people saw that the account was back before. We didn't get a message. We didn't get anything. It was just kind of like,
Yeah, it was weird. I just got notifications of people commenting on your posts, which we were mentioned in. So I just saw it randomly in our notifications.
Yeah, it was crazy. So we could talk a little about the process that we went through. We still have no idea what actually did it. So, Brian, yeah, you could take us through kind of why we got kicked off.
Well, we have guesses. We have guesses of why. So at some point, I think it was July, mid-June last year, we were taken off, and the final piece they claim was a DMCA claim. It was we clearly used a video within fair use, but a very activist mother, the mother of Desmond is Amazing, said that was a specific picture. So the video we quoted was a YouTuber who was talking about kind of a pride fest and showed a video or just a clip of a newspaper with a picture of Desmond is Amazing. And that alone, because that picture appeared in our Twitter clip, got us banned or got us DMCA'd. However, they said in the review that we tweeted other offensive things like ivermectin saves lives. Those three words, ivermectin saves lives. So we had gotten suspended for a little bit of COVID, misinfo, technically malinformation, which means true information that they don't like, and kind of some weaponized DMCA claims that were clearly fair use. And then we get banned. So I think Elon, when he said the algorithm isn't banning people, it's when the people meet to figure out whether you get banned, you have a very biased team. And I think that's right. They took a look and said, if we were maybe had the right stance, they let us go, but we got banned.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, so the background a little here is, we've always kind of viewed the Twitter account as something we did for fun. I never thought we'd be big enough to actually get banned. But I think really when Twitter first took notice of the account was on New Year's Eve of 2022. So New Year's Eve, Joe Rogan released the interview with Robert Malone. And I don't know, for those that remember the mass formation psychosis that was trending for a while, but it was a really good interview. Malone really broke down the arguments against, some of the vax and, some of the stuff for the monoclonal antibodies. And it was a really fantastic interview. And we just clipped that. We put it up. We had no idea it was going to go viral. I thought, if anything, they'd take it down, because at that point, Twitter was very, staunch on the COVID content. But yeah, we put those clips up, and all of a sudden, they were 5 million views, 6 million views. They were going nuts. And I think what happened was, because it was on New Year's Eve, I think we caught some of them sleeping. Twitter, they were probably out celebrating the New Year's as well. But ever since we put those up, then it was pretty much any COVID stuff we put up, we would get dinged.
But it started before that, Sean. 2 weeks prior to to Robert Malone going on, and it got released on New Year's Eve. 2 weeks prior, Peter McCullough went on Malone, and we also clipped some of those, and that's when Melissa Tate got banned. So Melissa Tate quote tweeted our video, and then she was banned. Now she's back as well.
And Joe actually retweeted that. Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting. Yeah. So we were kicked off.
Now we know largely the type of process that was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. And to think that these Twitter tech people can sit there and weigh in on a physician like McCullough, whose clinical practice is massive and has been involved in major drug trials. I mean, this guy has a legitimate opinion. To sit there and say, oh, he's just wrong based on some kind of consensus. This is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a shot, you know, like those, I think personally, like, I think that interview with Malone really kind of quieted down a lot of the fear that was happening around COVID, because I think people are still very uneasy at that point. And Joe Rogan obviously reaches millions. I think that it was actually a really positive thing for people to kind of be like, hey, let's take a step back and think about this thing. But yeah, like you were saying, Bill, at that point, like social media, the big tech platforms, I should say, they were not, they didn't like that. They didn't like, you know, you couldn't say.
And at the same time that McCullough and Malone had, that's when the Omicron variant started to make its entry and then become dominant by early 2022. So, you know, having people saying that Omicron is very different than Delta, that was a big deal too.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we're back. And you know, it's just weird, like being off. We were off for what, 8 months, Bri?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About 8 months. We didn't get an email, and then we just popped back. So we made a thread, kind of like the feelings of what happens when you're kind of kicked out of social media. And it's, you know, we came up with, you know, like, how do we feel? Shock, anger, betrayal, you know, in the censors, it doesn't just have an impact on, we're kind of kicked out of the milieu, but everyone else that watches this, they see Melissa Tate get banned. They see, you know, Malone himself got kicked off of Twitter. So McCullough eventually did, but a lot of the other COVID kind of dissidents also got kicked off. Then you start to self-censor because you're afraid, especially if you build up a big account that has hundreds of thousands or millions, like that's worth something. I mean, that really can help get a message out. And you're worried
not only that, it can be the basis of your livelihood and survival. So when survival is getting taken away, you know, that hurts people's brains.
And if you really feel like you've got a message to get out, like say you're advocating that, you know, such and such a group like the Rohingyas or something, or the Uyghurs are being enslaved, or you believe that you have some important medical information to dispense about COVID. I mean, the stress of not being able to get that message out.
Yeah.
That's real.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys have been, you know, at the forefront of kind of cult following, and like basically, you know, the correlation between speaking out against the cult, you know, when you're in the cult, you know, there's a relationship between, like, you know, Scientology even, and like, you know, when you speak out, and the chilling effect that has on what you will be willing to say in public, like, you know, the whole kind of stuff related to COVID and, you know, politics, those are more like, you know, obviously not organized cults. They're sort of like mass disorganized cults.
Agreed. Yeah.
But
the social pressure is the important piece. I mean, James Lindsay has got, anyone that might be listening to this, I couldn't recommend to listen more. He has a 2-hour podcast on how to survive, or it's called Surviving a Modern Day Struggle Session. And he compares what is going on, like the social pressures and the tactics that are used online very much resemble actual struggle sessions from real Chinese prisons in the 50s. And he works a lot off a book where a psychologist was interviewing these people that came out post-Korean War out of Chinese prisons. They were Americans and Frenchmen. They were not Chinese nationals, but they missionaries that had dedicated their lives to serving the people of China. And they were put in these thought reform prisons, and the social pressures are intense. And they want to make you confess. They make you believe that you're wrong. Like you're in cellmates that they put you in as a new, like your cellmates are kind of at a higher level. So they immediately just berate you that you're a criminal and you don't understand what you've done. And then you end up having to confess to things that aren't real. And in order to move up the ladder, you then have to then berate others. You have to betray your own friends or cellmates, the people in your social circle, or lest you'll get struggled and go to the bottom again. And I think this is what happens when we see these people like apologize, like the social pressure. I mean, you talk to the banjo player. What's his name again?
Winston.
Winston. Right. When he tweeted that thing out, like all of a sudden the mob comes from him, and the social pressure to try to explain yourself, but what's demanded isn't an explanation. What's demanded is a complete denunciation, a betrayal of his friend Andy. That's what's demanded. And that's what they need to do. Betray. So in these Chinese prisons, you had to betray your friends. And you had to say that, yes, my friend gave me economic intelligence. You know what was economic intelligence? That was saying what the price of gas was. And then you had to say this was a spy mission for America. Like, you have to admit, and that the people that hit on Andy know, they literally say that he's making kill lists for Adam Waffen, which is a neo-Nazi group. No, he's not. No, he isn't. That's an absurd claim. But then the social pressures that are involved are intense. And so I feel for anyone that's going through that. And Winston, I think, did a good job. Initially, he said I was going to reflect. And I think we have to give people, instead of booing people like that, we have to understand the stresses that they're going under and give them support. Because, when you're ripped away from your social circle, it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is bizarre how, they'll make you apologize digitally with sort of like, yes, I accept that I have violated the community guidelines, and you have to, like that in the Babylon Bee, and Peterson basically refused to click that button. They could have come back that whole time, but they weren't.
Yeah, it's a tantalizing like carrot and threat that they do, that they promise this tantalizing bit of leniency. If you just say the right thing, if you just denounce him, if you just apologize, if you just say, I'm going to reflect, then things will be better.
Well, I'm trying to understand what the legal, like from big tech's perspective, there must be some legal reason that they make you, it's like you're reinforcing your contract with the terms of service, that they would sort of force that apology, as opposed to some like sort of twisted, just like to be a jerk and rub it in and like own you like psychologically. They're like, to build something like that, there's probably some legal basis for what they're trying to achieve in terms of the contract, I would guess.
But don't you think the psychological manipulations are really what's at work? Because like in these Chinese prisons, what they would do is treat you terribly. Like while you had to, when you were with your interviewer, your judge that was interrogating you, you'd be in chains, right? You couldn't even go to the bathroom by yourself. Like they wouldn't treat you like a human being for 3 or 4 weeks. But then randomly you'd come in and they'd take the chains off and say, the government regrets that you're having such a tough time with this. All we want to do is clear up and get your confession out so we can let you go.
Yeah.
And this is that same piece, that if you would just denounce, if you just do all these things, it'll be good again. And that pressure is huge, especially when you're removed from all of your friends that might do this, or if you're forced to denounce your family, which your support group.
I agree. I mean, the parallels are insane, but I'm trying to think about it from the lens of someone who like develops software every day. Because, just for them to build that functionality where you have to accept, and like for it to be all built in with the moderation system, like that's a big development project to build that. So they either did it for some like legal requirement, or maybe their like trust and safety team was, we really need to enforce our community guidelines when they come back to make sure that they've learned their lesson. It could be something like that as well.
You wonder I didn't think about it from the tech point, but
it could be. But like in the case of YouTube, and I would argue YouTube has way more experience in this. Like what they would do is just give channel strikes, right?
Yeah.
So you knew, okay, you had 3 strikes. They would tell you what your strike was for. You could appeal it, but they weren't necessarily having you delete anything on your own. It was weird when Twitter like initially started doing that. We had a couple of those too, where they forced us to delete tweets. I get it's their platform, but like, what's the argument against them just taking it down and giving you your strike like YouTube? I mean,
but you do have to admit, by taking it down, you admit to the violation.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, I agree with them. Keeping it down. The whole thing is a complete joke. It's just one of those things where to jump to the full blown, like, China has infiltrated all the big tech moderation teams and like are trying, like, in terms of, is it actual, communist ideology, or is there something like that is more of a predecessor to that?
But I think it's a tactic. So they're Maoist tactics. I don't think that you need like China's help at all. It's just this works. And so really this is kind of a neo-Maoism. And when you kind of talked about the cult, I think I know what you're talking about. It's the certain cult of what we call wokeness, that you understand your place in society. I think the woke don't think that being white is bad. They think, well, white, you have a special place in society, be the good ally. The oppressed Black person has his own place too, and you have to get in your position. And if you're going to be a white person that isn't a good ally, then you're out of place and then need to be shamed or struggled. So I don't know if it has anything to do directly with how Mao did his Cultural Revolution, but you can use the same tactics and have an American version.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. That's like,
I don't necessarily know if Twitter's, but the thing that's interesting, it's like when you look at Scientology and you look at all the cults, you'll see they do utilize certain practices that they know work. They all have like the disowning thing. They all get blackmail material on you. They all have their shunning practices. They all have their tattling on one another practices. Like the Scientology was good because there was a lot of video evidence of like kind of the things they were doing. But yeah, I mean, they're just taking from earlier concepts from earlier cults that worked. Did Twitter take Maoist concepts? I don't know, but was someone on the team like embedded in that kind of thought process? I don't know. It just seems weird that, like I said, YouTube was doing the strike system forever, and everyone seemed to kind of understand that, even though their TOS was still very hard to follow. You didn't always necessarily know why you got a strike, but everyone always understood, okay, 3 strikes. Like, I don't know why Twitter went to the next step of having the creator then have to delete it themselves. That was a strange. It was a newer practice, right, Bill? That was not. I don't remember that being a thing.
Yeah, it seems more recent. Well, let's look at Elon's tweet about open sourcing the recommendations, because so you were saying that Mythinformed you still can't search it on Twitter easily.
Yeah, so that's the one thing I noticed with like all the reactivated accounts, not just ours, but like even before ours came back, like looking up, Sargon, Carl Benjamin, or Destiny, like if you try and look up Steven's account, or anyone that got banned and reinstated, it's really hard to find them. And I found a tweet on here of people talking about it, but it's like in the search. So like even if you're following them and you try to search them, it's like impossible.
I know, no, it just happened to me, and it's been happening because I just actually tagged Sargon in a post about Sam Harris, and he wasn't coming up in the tag. But again, this is sort of another example where I put on tech hat and actually think about how it's working. And when you have different search indexes, like there's definitely something that happens when channels are deactivated or banned or suspended, where kind of the indexing and caching changes. So it's like, I'm not saying it doesn't excuse it at all. It's like they should kind of refresh if there's a caching issue, so that it comes up, on the autocomplete more easily. Like it may be something like that. It's a byproduct of having been punished before in the database. So it takes time for that to like propagate and come back. But, because we've even like experienced on Minds, like say there's like a dead username that no one has sat on, that no one has used for 8 years, and we're like, oh, we might want to bring that one back to life. If we change a username, like it will not show up in search for a while. We have to manually get it back into search. So there's definitely developer reasons for this, but it's still bad.
Would the same thing happen if you had like a pretty big account and I don't know, they just went off the grid for 6 months to Thailand or something, and their account never got suspended, but all of a sudden they were tweeting a lot, getting a lot of engagement, and then just quit and came back? Then what happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible that your retention is correlated to your retention and the engagement that your channel receives is correlated to sort of its ranking. I don't know that, and so that's why it's awesome.
But it could be, right.
Well, yeah. And so what Elon is saying, Sean, if you go back there, is that they're gonna open source, apparently, their recommendation code, which is great to hear. It's not the whole stack, which is what we want. We want to know, we want to have transparency in everything going on at Twitter, including just everything. DMs, all of it. DMs are like the most important thing. So we'll see. We'll see what this. We were asking, like, what's the license going to be? Like, how? It is unprecedented, and so it's a big deal and awesome that they're doing this. Skeptics are going to say that, oh, now the bots and the spammers are just going to kind of try to game the algorithm by having access to it now. And that actually is somewhat of a valid concern. But I think that the benefit is much higher to have it open source so everyone can see the logic.
For non-tech people, what does that mean to make it open source?
It means the code, on GitHub that creates the results will be published on GitHub or GitLab or wherever, and people can actually look at the variables in the code and say, oh, I get boosted into recommendations if I post video, or if I'm daily active, or all, like, oh, don't post a link, you'll get punished. All of these kind of punishment and reward variables in the engine. So when we are all like conspiracizing about the algorithm, it's like
everyone has their theory.
So we're gonna hopefully see what it is based on and what it punishes as well. So
unless it's open source and published, we're just guessing.
Well, yeah, and everyone has their theory, right? Like, if you talk to anyone that's on social media, it's like, oh, I post X amount per day, I post X amount clips per day, I post, whatever. And it's pretty much everyone kind of has their own like guess at, what is going to do the best for their channel, or like what a good active channel is. Like, we don't know. I mean, should you post 100 times a day? Should you post 10 times a day? Like, and so that's interesting. So I was wondering what you meant by like people could game the algorithm if we knew. That's interesting. I didn't know.
Well, yeah, it just means that if you follow the rules perfectly, then you're going to get, up in the rankings. And so if you're trying to spread nasty spam, then that can be a problem. However, security through obscurity is not a sustainable direction. Like, ultimately, the spam detection system on Twitter should be able to find the bad actors and still enable, transparent algorithms. So to be determined. I hope that it happens. Fingers crossed, because it'd be a huge step in the right direction.
We can't get the blue check either, because apparently the account has been inactive for 80 days. So I think there's a lot of people that can't get the blue check.
So actually, when you get reinstated, we tried to sign up for blue, and it said you can't do it for 30 days because your account was inactive for a certain amount of time, which I thought was interesting.
That was interesting. Yeah, I think they are working hard on bots, but they also are saying that they're doing encrypted video chat. But again, unless they open source the whole thing, it's just trusting and guessing. So. So we'll see, but it's just like, what is their process for who they're unbanning now? It's so sort of day to day. It's so day to day. Like,
I know,
and Kanye and AJ are just like hanging out, not allowed back, and it's like,
who's AJ?
Alex Jones.
Oh, Alex Jones. Okay, sorry.
I like to call him AJ.
Okay.
Bill knows him as AJ. They're tight.
Fair enough.
So it's just like, it's such a personal grudge and not even-handed. Like, I don't know. I would really love to see a list. I don't know if anyone listening or any of you guys have seen anything, like what is the list of the high profile and low profile, whatever, banned accounts? Like, who has not been let back?
Yeah.
I saw David Icke got let back, which is interesting, and good.
There were a few under. I could look through our comments on that post, because when we said, hey, we're back, there were other people like adding some of the people that weren't.
So this was an interesting discussion I actually had with ALX. So like ALX, he's on Twitter. He kind of was spearheading a lot of the bring them back, which was really cool.
Yeah.
He has a big Twitter account, and he was utilizing it to highlight people that were banned wrongfully to bring them back. And, you know, so I thought maybe like he would have some insight. He was like, he's like, they have a ton of requests. So that's the first problem, right? Like they're just people. They have all these requests of people to come back. So that's the first issue, manpower. Secondly, he's like, really like, as far as what the best tactic is, he's like, sometimes it's like adding Elon that works. Sometimes, you know, your appeal just comes up and it pops up and you're back. He's like, there really is no secret sauce.
It's just interesting that they wouldn't have launched even just like a basic form for people who feel like, hey, can I come back now? You're letting everyone else back.
Yeah,
so he did say at some point that they were on a list, that there was accounts above, I think, I don't know, 10,000 or something.
Yeah, where's that?
There was a huge pile, and they were just going through. I mean, you don't know where you were in the pile.
Right.
Yeah. But you would think it would be helpful to them to know who even like wants to come back.
Yeah.
So,
but let's be real too. A lot of people got moved to the front of the line too. I mean,
right.
You know what I mean? Like
these were the hot people that get into the club first.
We appealed specific. I mean, if people want to know, like, hey, what did we do? All we did was we filed an appeal 8 months ago when it happens, and then we filed a follow-up appeal like 2 months after that, and that was it. That's all we did. But yeah, we never got a response from Twitter saying, hey, you know, like we're reviewing it, or like some number, you know, like this is when you should expect to hear something or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's just a queue of stuff to go through, and they're just kind of slowly making their way through it based on audience size. Realistic, you know, because there's probably some manual work that has to get done to sort of evaluate each one, and obviously the users with more followers bring more immediate benefit to Twitter to, you know, put time into it. So that's likely what's happening. It's just funny that they haven't said anything about it and are just doing it sporadically. So I don't know. It seems like there's not really a clear voice. Who would you consider the voice of sort of trust at Twitter now?
It's Elon right now.
Good question. Outside of Elon, that's a really good question.
Like there should be someone every day who's just like ripping. It would be great PR for them. Like,
right. Well, it's not Ligma Johnson.
I mean, did Ligma actually get hired?
I know, but I think Ligma went to visit. They took a picture.
So yeah, here's Twitter.
I don't think Ligma's actually a coder.
So here's Twitter support. So it's still active, which is good to see. You know, it looks like they're putting up a tweet every 3, 4, 5 days or so. So yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, you know, ALX, that's what was really good about Alex, is like he was kind of a beacon to be like, hey, you know, start putting these people like at least on there so we can see who is wrongfully suspended. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything in here, but yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful. Like that's what I was thinking. Like maybe they could just relaunch like a new application that's like, hey, if you think you were wrongfully suspended, we hear you. You know, just fill this out here, and then maybe start like a new list of like a new appeal process. Because, you know, let's be honest, a lot of people that appealed maybe were not too serious about getting their account back, but. You know, or they were bots or whatever the case was. But yeah, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but what if you only had like 2,000 followers, which is not a huge account, but it's still not small either. You know, you could have really liked that, but you got nailed for, I don't know, something stupid.
Yeah, that's the collateral damage that is like really scary, because it's, you know, that's the majority of people. Like most people are not influencers. They have, you know, maybe they have a couple thousand, like they worked hard for it over the period of a decade, and they just, shared their views for that decade. And then, there's no chance of, them getting a huge crowd trying to come and save the day.
Yeah.
So, and they're just screwed. And so that's why it's kind of like, well, you could have, anyone can throw up a web form to, try to, it's more active users for them. Don't they want more users?
Right. Right. That's what I always thought was really strong with all of them, with YouTube and all of them. And that's what I love about Minds. Like, we are principled in that stance. And, how do we get in front of Twitter to help them with some of this open source?
Dude, I was considering, we were actually just talking about this today. We have a certain number of users that have been banned for whether illegal stuff or just like malicious, spam or bots, like crazy, like attacks, like that kind of stuff. Some people, but like, I still partially want to email them and just be like, try to engage that conversation.
Yeah.
So that there is a path to potentially come back. Like that's even people who have done illegal things. Even people who have gone to jail. It's like, does it really make sense to completely ban them from communication like that? Because we know from the research that makes it worse and probably screws with their head. So I'm very strongly considering doing that this year, because it just, it's one thing if a user has literally like tried to hack or attack or like exploit the platform. That is, it'd be more difficult to justify letting them come back just because they can.
That's like a cyber attack. That would be.
It's like a cyber attack. Yeah. So that would be even more complicated. But a lot of times people who we've had ethical hackers come and like show how to manipulate something and then like ask for a bounty reward, and like they are actually really smart at like helping if directed properly, because like these are smart people who know how to, if you know how to create a bot, to be honest, you're ahead of a lot of people in terms of that technically. So it's all about like creating incentives that make it worth it for people to want to respect the rules.
How does Minds do it? Do you have a team? Like we said, we're kind of guessing at what Twitter's doing. What do you guys do?
For what specifically?
For like if there's a banned account or an appeal.
Yeah. So we have a jury system for a set of appeals where users can appeal to a randomized jury of active users to come back. So, if they appeal, then 12 active users who are unconnected from each other get pinged, and to vote on the appeal, because we wanted to protect ourselves from ourselves.
So do you have to like when you sign up, like to become a juryman, how do those 12 accounts get pinged or how are those selected?
It's just based on sort of a randomized set of 12 active users who are not, in a cluster together, so that, it's sort of independent parties.
And it would say, do you want to take part in this? If I got one of those, could I turn it down or not?
Yeah, you can turn it down, and then it goes to somebody else. But we don't. We want to expand that to like many more decisions. It's only currently working for the NSFW filtering, and because like if a channel repeatedly doesn't tag stuff as NSFW, like it really messes with a lot. And so we ask people to self-label, so that because if they never label, then NSFW content gets into regular feeds and screws people their experience up. So
it could screw you up at your actual work, like if it's not safe,
right,
it's not safe,
right.
Like the other users, right? No, I love that system.
We're totally fine with NSFW. It's just like make sure that you're respecting the filters. And then, but for like actual unlawful stuff, we can't put that to the jury, which is kind of complicated, because then we're potentially putting illegal content in front of them. Now, I do want to try to find a way to make that work somehow, because those are actually often the edge cases that are really complex and need more eyeballs and
is
are more.
Is it more like an American law, or the idea like from a different country like Britain, where they don't have the same free speech law?
So we do U.S. law, which is, I'm glad you brought this up because this is an absolute key point. Mine's, if we get requests from other countries, it's like, no, sorry, we're not going to obey Pakistan's law because
Germany on Twitter is always big, right?
Germany is, I could tell stories and will soon more. We actually have some news coming out about that. But and we have been banned in certain countries, like Vietnam specifically. If we had cooperated, we could still be there. And China just bans everybody, so obviously we're banned in China. But it's almost like if you're not banned in China, like, what are you doing?
Who do you work for? Right.
But Twitter, for instance, like, and this is interesting, that they are complying with foreign laws right now. So they're still playing that game where they're going to be taking down, if Saudi Arabia asked them to take down, X content of women or whatever it is, like, I don't know. They apparently they're still doing that. I mean, based on Elon's recent statements about, I think he was in Germany, I want to say, and he was just like, yep, we're happy to, cooperate with your rules. And like Germany has this law called the Net Enforcement Act, which is all about battling misinformation, which basically means anything that they want to take down.
Right.
So, that's a problem. And but that's the game you have to play. And if you want, I don't know. I think it's we haven't seen examples. I want to look into this more, like, because if Twitter is currently complying with all of these foreign laws, like, there should be a lot more censorship happening than you're seeing.
Yeah.
So, I also, because Twitter
it doesn't show up in Germany though. Like it could, a post that me and you could see, maybe we don't see it if we're in Berlin.
Right. So maybe that's causing us to not see people complaining about it from those countries. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it looks very regional, like on Twitter, actually on a lot of, Facebook, whatever. It always looks like if I'm in a different part of the world, I'm like in a different, Twitter, like,
it's a different recommendation.
Or like a different like community almost, so I don't know. And I don't necessarily know what the point is playing by their rules, especially since, you did that interview, Bill, with Brian Callen, and he was talking about the Chinese movie he did and how everyone's just getting around all of the censorship anyways and still accessing these sites. What's the point of even playing their game? Because it just seems like people are going to get around, like, circumvent that anyways.
Yeah, the government just knows most people are lazy, and it's worth it.
I think it's different though. Like resting. Imagine I think in China, I think this is correct, that if you have a VPN, you can actually get convicted of a terrorism charge. But it's one thing to arrest one of their own citizens and throw them in jail for that. It's another thing to take an American that's making a movie in there. That would potentially create an international incident. So maybe it's just selective enforcement. But I would, man, if I was a Chinese citizen to hop in a VPN, man, that's risky.
Oh, right. Because if you're caught even using it, you get in trouble. You're right.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not as simple as just going to the VPN website, downloading it. You have to be anonymous from the start.
Yes.
In order, like, you have to have a full computer that is fully locked down, that is not attached to your identity and your social credit score at all. And you have to know how to maintain that anonymity over time, which is very difficult to do.
Yeah, so, and the consequences are big if you make a mistake.
I gotcha.
But I'm curious, your guys' thoughts on the fact that, so Twitter did remove the COVID misinformation policy, which is a big deal. And that's what we found from the Twitter files, was essentially co-authored by the government.
Yeah.
The whole, so,
Yeah.
you know, that was removed, but otherwise, actually, a lot of the Twitter terms are mostly the same. For instance, in the hate policy section, you know, we remember when Megan Murphy got banned for just saying, you know,
men aren't women.
Men aren't women. The dead naming clause is still in the Twitter terms.
Interesting.
But yet people are saying, you know, I remember when the transition first happened, everyone was like typing, you know, learn to code, you know, men aren't women. Everyone was testing the boundaries as much as they could, and people aren't getting banned for it. So it's almost like they are keeping the policies in place for some reason, probably because they know that if they remove the hate policy, then they're going to get insanely bad press. And so they're sort of leaving it up but then just sort of leaving the content up too, and like not enforcing the content.
It's like a marijuana law that they had on the books that they're just not enforcing.
Right.
It could be that. It's interesting.
I mean, because you know these conversations are happening. Like it would be, the media would attack so hard if they ripped out all of the, you know, anti-hate language and the gender stuff. So
hey, Bill, Andrew Yang just retweeted you. I really liked your tweet. How about
us? It's our tweet.
Well, right, but that specifically, you wrote that one. That was good. How about a respectfully disagree button? Here, I'll pull it up. I really like that.
Respectfully disagree button.
I really like that one. I really like that.
That's
mean, it's actually a serious suggestion.
It was Josie.
I like that. I thought it was.
I'm actually not kidding.
I know. I know. Oh, where is that? Oh, here we go. Here we go.
It almost is like an anti-troll button because you have to click respectfully. That's interesting.
No, I think that's a really good idea.
Too.
I really, because like, you know, like Facebook tried the thumbs up, thumbs down thing, and like the thumbs down thing, like it just looks, I guess YouTube kind of had that too, but the thumbs down, it just makes it look 100% negative. Like you can respectfully disagree with somebody, you know, like we do it all the time.
Well, because you know, downvote is good to have. I think you need upvotes and downvotes, but the question is, there's a big difference between, there's two main different contexts of upvoting or downvoting something. Like you could be upvoting something because you agree with the nature of the post, or you could be upvoting something just because you want that post to spread.
Yeah.
Yes.
And same with downvote. You could be downvoting it because, oh my God, that's a horrible thing that happened in, you know, China.
Right.
Or you could be downvoting it because you think it's like bad content that needs to not exist. So there's sort of like an emotional layer and then like a quality layer. And you know, we've considered breaking those types of engagements apart so that it's more clear, like when people are literally not wanting the post to be there versus disagreeing with sort of the content.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And it's kind of like Netflix does it too, where they'll have like a downvote. It's like, hey, I just don't like that. And then it like, you know, it fixes your algorithm to only show you content or like movies or whatever that you like. So I don't mind in that case, but I like the respectfully disagree.
Wait, but sorry, what is the Netflix downvote?
So like if they're like, hey, did you like this movie? And then you can downvote it, and then you won't get
right.
But if you liked a movie, they can then recommend things that are similar to that movie that you did upvote, you know. That's kind of how theirs work.
They're asking the specific question, which is good.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, did this movie make you sad?
Yeah. Right.
Which actually, you know, with the emoji reactions that they have on Facebook and other places, Discord does emoji reactions like very heavily. I think that actually emoji reactions are kind of cool in that they enable much more nuanced reaction than just binary.
Yeah.
True.
That's a good
Although
point.
I hate the angry one, you know, with the red face and it seems like snarling. Like,
Oh, it makes you sad. It makes you
I'm
mad.
outraged. I'm outraged. You know, I like respectfully disagree, but way better than that
Yeah,
one.
I do.
Right,
I
but
do.
the question is it's there's a difference between when people use the angry face, do you think that they're saying this content makes me angry? That's most likely what they mean. Not that
Whatever situation it's covering. Like, I don't know, a dog got run over by some guy that was drunk, you know, and you get like an angry face or something.
Yeah. Like an angry face. Yeah.
You
But
know,
both
or
you don't
angry
something
faces
bad's happening, you know,
the
to
angry
somebody.
face could be confusing because you could be angry at the content or you can be angry at the poster. You know,
that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah. And I think that always gets sort of diluted because multiple people are actually answering it in both ways. So that's when the data can get a little bit confusing. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, we want to move towards much more like community-centric moderation. One good thing that Twitter has been working on, which I think they've actually done a good job with, is the community notes. You seen that?
I generally really like the community notes. I don't even know how it works. Like how
It
one
used to be
gets done and
called.
who's doing those notes.
I think I think it got rolled out when you guys were banned. So it would be interesting. I think you might be able to like apply for it. So you should look that up. But yeah, you get into the program and then you have like a whole navigation tab where you're prompted to sort of review posts and answer certain questions about it. And then, you know, they sort of apply that data to the post to provide additional context, which is actually sort of jury-ish. And it seems to be working way better now than it used to as well, because there's, you know, not like more users are participating in it, not just like a few fact checkers.
I had never seen it before, and that there obviously some quality control on it, because occasionally I get a thing and it says, do you want to rate whether this was helpful? And then you have to say yes or somewhat, and then why.
I think that's different from the community notes. That's more of just a survey that is powering your personal recommendations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But, you know, maybe that applies to, maybe they use that data to kind of determine what gets reviewed by the community. I'm not sure, but
like when it's already been noted, actually, and then you can rate the community note. And I think that's supposed to be on the note itself. Like,
yeah, I mean,
helpful and why.
So yeah, like, well,
why not?
Ultimately, like, this reputation data, all of the post data around all of these posts on any social network, like, our goal is to move to a place where all of that data on your content sits on a decentralized system, which you can control and, you know, port between different apps and whatnot. Like right now, it's very much Twitter, Facebook, you know, YouTube, Minds. Everyone has these different data sets and different data profiles. But, you know, this new protocol that we integrated with called Noster, which is actually kind of blowing up right now. And it's basically like, it is that. And Twitter, ironically, banned Noster along with Mastodon and, you know, Instagram links for a little while. But then they rescinded that policy. But I think that I really want Elon to understand that, you know, interoperability is, you know, Noster is not a competing platform. It is a protocol that any platform can integrate with. So there's actually no Noster like homepage. It's just code that different apps can connect with so that your user's identity can be owned by them along with all their data. So what it would eventually mean is that, you know, because right now all your posts to Minds are getting published on Noster, meaning that if you ever want to leave Minds, you can go to your settings, grab your private key, and then go and sign into another app that interfaces with Nostr. Like there's one called Damus, and your profile and your posts and your followers come with you.
Yeah.
And so that if any platform bans you, it doesn't matter. You still own your network and your content, and that's like, that's the scariest part of deplatforming.
Yeah.
Is losing your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know, because in some ways that's a resume of sorts, or like a portfolio that you could be showing, especially if you're working on nut jobs.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up on Callan's podcast, because obviously he has more like a normie, tech normie audience. You know, like I think that's such a huge point that people need to understand. There are ways out there to protect your own data, and we were victim of. You know, we fell victim with Twitter. We were on there 10 years, and it was all gone. Like we couldn't access any of it. All of our videos were gone. Everything we wrote, everything, it was just gone.
So did they actually
Nostr then?
What was that?
Or so on Nostr, does Minds work with Nostr?
Yeah, we are core protocol developers of Nostr. So like we've built certain, major functions of it, and we're like, and that's the beauty of it. Like no one owns it. There's no company. It was anonymously created. The creator is anonymous. Like no one actually knows. Like he'll talk in forums and stuff, but like no one really knows who he is. And so, but that's so important because there's no one to go after.
Yeah.
There's no one control. Like we run a relay. So the way it works is you have all these relays that anyone can, run the relay code on their computer. And then you have these different clients. So mine's also a client. So when you post on it, your stuff goes to Nostr. And then, you can sign into other apps and kind of be the same identity.
Yeah.
Through different apps.
Yeah. That's huge.
Cool.
Yeah. That's so huge.
And yeah. So we don't see major uptake on other social media sites with that right now. Correct?
What do you mean?
Like, is there anyone else that's adopting that? Any other social media?
I mean, there are. They're much smaller now, but actually, ironically, Dorsey donated like $250,000 to the anonymous creator of Nostr, this guy Fiat Jaff. No strings attached. He literally just sent the guy Bitcoin. I think that Jack is, repenting for trying to repent for some of his sins at Twitter, and he knows that there can't be a company. Like in Dorsey's private texts to Elon that were leaked, you can read in the lawsuit they were leaked. Yeah. They came up in discovery, and there's literally text of Elon and Jack saying like, Twitter really needs to be running on an open decentralized protocol, and there can't be a company. And so, but Nostr, even without Dorsey's donation, is still just thriving. There's like dozens of apps. There's people building chess apps on Nostr. It's like you can build pretty much anything you want on it. So nothing is huge. Like I think there's probably only tens of thousands of users of the network, but they're all like high profile Bitcoiners and like really smart developers. So the people who are being attracted to it initially are like actually a key group of people who can literally, the type of people who built Bitcoin. So it's going to take a while before it's, I would say another year before things are super smooth, but like everybody needs to get in the habit of like knowing that, where am I storing my keys? Most people like listening, I don't know if you guys like, so I'll use you guys as an example. Do either of you have any cryptocurrency wallets?
I do. I have MetaMask.
I don't.
I do because I work for Minds, and Jack Ottman took me through it, and yeah.
So the way that the identity works in Nostr, and is this or Signal, or any of these other apps that use crypto keys, is that your crypto keys are, in a sense, your most valuable asset. And you have crypto keys for messaging, for your money, for, different apps. And those keys are your username, basically. So it's your username and your password. You have a public key, which is the address where people can send you money or communicate with you. And then you have your private key, which is what enables you to, publish from that key and access all the information. That's really the paradigm that the world just needs to realize. It's like, I need to get crypto keys and start educating myself on how they work and just use them, because the only way you can be sovereign on the internet is with crypto keys. Yep. You cannot be free on the internet if you're just logging into websites that control you.
Right. Do you mean by that? Do you mean like the FTX exchange?
Exactly. Like FTX is basically centralized. They were storing people's crypto on their behalf.
Right.
So as opposed to people storing it in their own crypto wallet, they were basically a bank. And people,
like I'd give you an you give me an IOU, paper IOU, and I'd give and you'd set up a crypto on my behalf. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with Twitter or YouTube. It's like, I'm going to store these videos on your behalf, and if something happens to us, you're screwed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, sure.
Well, and I think that's all super, super important. I think the other thing that's going to be important for the big tech platforms, and something Minds is already doing great, is helping, like really focusing on the creators and helping them make money. Twitter's great. It's great we're back on Twitter, but we really, Brian and I are lucky in the sense that we have the time and we can put some of the content together, but a lot of people spend a ton of time on this a day that they maybe shouldn't be. And there's really no reward for that. On Minds, we automatically are giving people the cryptocurrency payout. You get a percentage a day, which is really nice. That's just for a free account. But we also have the Supermind feature, where you can literally go and find your favorite creators and send them a Supermind. And what it is, it's like you put in what you want to give, what you want to offer. You can ask a question. You can say, hey, it's my birthday today, or whatever the case is, and support the creators that you follow. On Twitter, really the only way to help the other creators that we follow is like to retweet them. Like there really is no way to actually.
I think it's like a cool version of Cameo. You could use that site. I used it for my parents' anniversary, and have a celebrity, make a thing for them. But this is a great way to do it for folks you follow the celebrities on social media.
Yeah, I've used Cameo before. We got my father-in-law what is the Yankees and Red Sox pitcher?
Yankees and Red Sox?
He played for both teams. The Rocket. He was like,
Tom Glenn. Not Tom
No,
Glenn.
not Tom Glenn. What the hell's his name?
I know. Hang on.
I don't know. It was too expensive, and he was legendary, and I can't believe I'm not remembering his name. But the difference with Cameo and Minds and Supermind is that it's all public. It's sort of part of the dialogue on Minds. With Cameo, it's like it's a birthday shout out, and it's not really like a social app. And so, And anyway, I was curious from you guys, like
Roger Clemens.
Thank you. So we're rethinking some of the monetization dynamics and economics on Minds. And I am curious, in your ideal world, what do you think the rev share split should be between creators and the platform? And so
it's a really good question.
That's one question.
Percentage-wise?
Yeah.
Percentage-wise, yes. And then also, because we're going to roll out this commission program where if people like refer somebody who buys a bunch of boosts or, upgrades to Minds Plus or Pro, we will actually give that person a cut of the revenue, like a major cut. So it's not just a, creator Minds rev share for like, memberships and super Minds and tips and whatnot, but it's also like, if you can bring people who help contribute to Minds, then you can take a share of the revenue that you bring in, kind of like a salesperson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does
So, like,
that?
if you're a distributor rep, like, you know, and you're going through somebody there, like, say you're going to be like a sub rep for somebody's distributorship, usually it's like 70-30. You know, that's what I've seen. So if I'm a sub rep for somebody, you know, and their commission's $1,000, then I would get 700 versus they would take 300.
Yeah,
because of their platform and their billing, and I just knew the client to sell it.
So basically 30% commission, you're saying, is what's standard?
Well, so 30% commission if it's the main seller. So if I'm working directly with the company, and you're selling the product, 30% commission would be on a hard to sell item. Yeah, 30%. But if you're a sub distributor, let's say that you're the distributor, that's the 30% commission, and then you want me to sub rep under you, meaning I don't have my relationships with you, not the company, then it's 70-30 the other way. Now I'm selling extra for you. They're giving you 30%, and then you're giving me 70% of that 30.
Yeah. I'm trying to pitch this to the team, and we'll see in the community. I don't think the community would have a problem with it. I want to do 50-50.
Wow.
Which
awesome. Wow.
I think would be really cool because
50-50 companies, 30% is a solid distributor. If that's coming right from the company, 50-50 is very large. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, that would enable, it's basically, you know, a job for anybody out there who, like, you know, because in order to justify doing sales work freelance, like, the commission needs to be hefty in order to even be able to risk doing that job.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, I think social media platforms, especially like the legacy big tech ones, have been spoiled in the sense that people have voluntarily went on and put content up and made content, and, you know, have populated their sites for them. So I think they got really used to people working for free, and I don't think that's the best model, you know, especially if you're going to spend a lot of time. If people are spending a lot of time on these things, like, you know, there should be the social media companies should view their creators as almost like employees, you know, like they are helping.
Exactly.
They are helping that. So, you know, what percentage, I don't know, 50-50 would be fantastic. But I think just the fact that Minds already kind of views the importance of its creators in the way that we do, I think is like huge. Like, I just think Facebook and YouTube, I will say, I always give them a little more credit because they did do a good job of monetizing their creators. At least they used to.
We're rolling that out as well. We're about to, and it's going to be a 50-50 share for sure. So if you serve boosts on your channel, we'll pay you 50% of whatever.
That's huge.
We make. I think YouTube does 60-40, I think, which honestly has helped so many creators.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about, like, on crypto? Like, the WF is meeting and such, and they're talking about, you know, green and all of this, sustainable, blah blah blah, all of this. Like, how much electricity is crypto use? Like, there's a lot of people I don't think get this, and, like, are decentralized cryptos going to be threatened by something like that?
That's a good question.
So Bitcoin is a proof of work blockchain, which means that, it does, you know, requires energy to run the mining nodes. And it does use a significant amount of power. I think, I want to say 0.2% of global energy consumption, but I need to fact check myself on that while we're on here. But, you know, regardless, like, compare that to a lot of other global energy consumption numbers and the value that Bitcoin provides for that. And, you know, to me, it's beyond worth it to have a, you know, distributed ledger with such kind of integrity. And, like, the traditional banking system uses a ton of energy.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, think about even just the brick and mortar of all of the banks.
Good point.
Like, Bitcoin doesn't have any of that footprint. And actually, you can use the, you know, excess, a lot of, you know, there's all kinds of, like, excess energy grabbing that you can do to kind of pull wasted energy into Bitcoin mines and kind of make productive use of energy that would have otherwise be wasted. So anyway, there's tons of research on that.
If that attack came, you're saying that's more of a propaganda attack than anything that's actually real.
Yeah, for sure. It's much more of a propaganda attack. I read the best, smartest people I know of on this topic are Lynn Alden and Nick Carter.
Okay.
If you want to read, they've written amazing breakdowns of how this works. And then Ethereum, however, which is the second largest crypto, it just reduced their carbon footprint by like 99.9% because they transitioned from proof of work blockchain to proof of stake, which means that you don't need a lot of it. You don't earn more for running a node with more energy now. You earn more for running a node from having staked ether in the node. So you can actually run, anyone from their laptop right now can run a node of Ethereum, and they just have to stake at least 32 Ethereum into their node. And then depending on how much ether you stake, you earn this yield reward for running the node. So, in both Bitcoin and Ethereum, you're earning Bitcoin or Ethereum for running the node. But the difference being that, kind of the consensus mechanism is slightly different. But yeah, like you don't need a huge machine to run run an Ethereum validator node anymore. And that's a huge deal in terms of decentralization, because it means you don't need this crazy equipment. You can just run it on your laptop or even your phone potentially. Not saying it would be easy to do that necessarily, but largely the energy argument against crypto is completely asinine, in my opinion.
Okay. No, it makes sense.
Are they saying something at WAF that made you?
I don't know if they have. I just know that they're crazy, and I've seen it out in the ether, so to speak.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful kind of anti-crypto talking point, and yeah, it's everything uses energy.
Yeah, but I think that if a person wanted a bunch of CBDCs, that you would think that you don't want people to opt out. There's a lot of people that want you to, if the only money you can have is the central bank digital currency, I can see why people might want to try to stop.
So this is key. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sure they're talking about CBDCs at some point.
Yeah.
At the forum. So media will try to lump everything in one bucket to say, even some of the alternative media gets this misconception. They think that crypto is some sort of like globalist, backed thing, which is going to get everybody on centralized digital, central bank digital currencies. But that's not correct exactly. So within crypto, every token is different. And you can have centralized tokens that are very dangerous and sketchy, or you can have decentralized tokens, which are, where we want to be moving. So, Bitcoin and Ethereum are extremely decentralized, and we want those. Now, if any foreign government, and some have done this, they did this in Venezuela as well, they just spin up their own token, and it runs on like a few nodes that they control, and they can control everything about it, and it becomes this sort of surveillance nightmare, and they can cut people off from their coins, and they can make coins only able to be used for certain purposes. They can take or add functionality to the individuals. So, but again, to play devil's advocate, I actually know a company that helps central banks do this, and you always have to compare kind of the proposed system in contrast to the existing system. So even though there are potential dangers of CBDCs, there's also dangers of, certain central banks being even more secretive.
Yeah.
Like because these are public ledgers. They can theoretically be audited more easily by the citizens against their government. So the government, assuming they actually use it, would potentially be more accountable to the citizens if there's a clear ledger.
Yeah.
Now, you know,
our federal bank is printing $1 trillion a year for many years in a row. So,
right. And there's so much missing money. I mean, in the U.S., like the Pentagon cannot pass an audit. Like they literally lose trillions of dollars.
That's mind-boggling to me.
It's so wild, and it's probably all getting funneled into like black ops and like, you know, all kinds of questionable places. We actually, I mean, to a degree, we know that that's what's happening, but you know, it's both systems have different costs and different benefits. Like physical cash is totally crucial to have because it enables anonymity. There's so many, you know, without anonymity and currency, it's like you've lost your freedom.
Yeah. And that crypto can provide that too.
That's the thing. Crypto is also like a bearer instrument. So,
and
you know,
if you're sending, it's better to send like cross country, because it's one thing to send it in the US, but to send money to, I don't know, India, it's going to have to go through multiple banks to get converted.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, we can see how well this link did on Twitter. I think that is, you know, one of the things. I know you guys are talking about crypto, but I was kind of thinking in my head, like, what gets rewarded on these platforms? Links always do terrible.
Oh, they're 100% punished. I'm sure
they're so bad with.
I mean, Twitter tried to roll out a policy potentially banning you for posting links.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
so we know that because what they're seeing is all of this outbound traffic from people posting links, which are taking people off the site, which they see is correlated to their numbers going down. So the more they promote links to other sites, they literally have a direct data point showing them, if you promote this, your active user base goes down. So that's why they're demoting it.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I never knew why. Like back in the day, I don't know if you remember, Bill, like back in the early days of big tech, like the links actually did really well. Like links to articles or links to.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, we used to drive millions and millions of page views monthly from like Facebook to mine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, you know, like insane, just like we could post links all day and there would just be like 10,000 people on each one. Like it was pure Wild West. And then they just saw that, you know, they wanted to control that and they took it away from everyone. But the scary part is it's like they know that they're limiting your ability to access your followers.
Yeah.
Like if it was just a chronological feed, I mean, and you can do the chronological feed on Twitter, even though it defaults to the algorithmic feed. You know, I think defaulting to the chronological feed is pretty important for creators.
No.
Even though the recommendations in the For You feed like are sort of interesting. So I'm not anti-algo.
I do a little bit of both. I do both. Like a lot of times, you know, like the way I kind of look at social media, especially with like shadow banning and everybody guessing at what does better and what doesn't. Like the way I always kind of viewed it, it's like you kind of, in order for things to get big, like you really have to work with your friends. You really do. Like if you're shadow banned, you know, whatever the case is, like, you know, if you can promote your friends and they promote you, I think that's always been the best way that's the best practice in my opinion. But yeah, it's because you really don't know what the secret sauce is, you know, like we'll put up a post, it's like a throwaway post and all of a sudden it's gigantic. And then we'll put up a post that's like, oh, we think this could do really well. And then it does nothing. Like you really, it's such a guessing game, you know.
Cool. Well, to wrap up, I really wanted to ask you guys about the Sam Harris situation, because you know, he's an atheist. He's a obviously well-known atheist, and I'm just curious your take on what's happening. Because he's trending every day.
I'll let you know. I'll let you start, Brian. Go ahead.
Well, there's a guy named Alexander, like K is his name. He posts, he goes, I think my entire like Twitter feed is to make Sam Harris go viral. I mean, those clips are going viral. He's clearly a smart guy. He's a deep thinker, but somehow he's caught in some kind of eddy current on all things Trump. I mean, to say that, even if I found Joe Biden had kids buried in the backyard, like a child murderer is among the worst thing you could be. That's still better than Donald Trump. That's crazy. I mean, that's double Hitler. He's not just Hitler, you're double Hitler. I don't know how you could say that. I mean, he should have said, that's the only reason I'd vote for Trump is if Biden had bodies buried in the backyard. Okay, that's a fine statement. It means you hate Trump, but I don't know. It's almost religious. To me, that's almost like a martyrdom. No, I'm willing to lose my life and not betray my faith in God.
And here's a follow-up. So Harris insists that Christopher Hitchens would have been just as anti-Trump as he is.
Yeah.
Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think, he might not be off on that, right?
Oh, really?
I mean, it's hard to say, right? So in the atheist world, and without getting too meta, with the atheism, it did start trending very hard left, very, very social justice, very toward the kind of the more the woke ideology. And it was, the woke ideology was weird. We saw it happening before our eyes. We got that was our first cancellation. I always joke we collect cancellations like Pokemon, but that was our first one where we decided to have the discussion with the skeptic community, the people that the atheist community deemed alt-right and trolls and all this, and we wanted to have that discussion. So, and when we did that, the atheist community completely shunned us. They said, a piece of shit and all this stuff. Hitchens is a different animal, right? He was really good at going in the face of people that didn't agree with him. That's what people loved about him. So even if he would have been anti-Trump, he still, I think, would have engaged in discussion with it, or at least taken his positions that. What Harris is doing is he's kind of adopted the Ben Affleck style of Islam. When Ben Affleck was yelling at him at Bill Maher, saying calling Harris an Islamophobe. I don't know if you guys remember that. Harris kind of turned into Ben Affleck, which is kind of weird to say. But yeah, I actually got to ask him a question. Harris was in Milwaukee, a couple years back or whatever, and I got to pick his brain on how atheism trended toward more to the left and how kind of crazy it started getting. And his answer was so dismissive. He's no, I didn't see that. That never happened. And you have to take atheism and separate it from the politics and stuff. But my question was very succinct. It's was atheism kind of co-opted by this new ideology that we're seeing? And he just kind of distanced himself from it. And he kind of distanced himself from a lot of the people that he used to engage with back then. So yeah, it's kind of sad for me, honestly, to see it. The fact that he's not even willing to have the discussion. I remember he was going after Brett Weinstein during COVID, and he wouldn't even listen to the other side outside the establishment narrative, which was that's not what a skeptic does, right? So.
Yeah. I definitely disagree with Sam Harris. I mean, Christopher Hitchens would talk about that story of Thomas More and the trial about the defense, and he's you'd cut down all the laws of England. He goes, what if I could give you the devil? And then the prosecutor says, I'd cut down all the laws of England in order to get him. And then he goes, and then after cutting down all the laws of England, and the devil will turn around to face you, what do you do then? Yeah. So I don't think the way Harris looks at Trump is an existential threat.
Yeah.
Whereas Hitchens looked at religion, even fundamentalist religion, Islam, I think that he would said that the concessions of liberty to them is the existential threat, because Britain was caving parts of their laws to accommodate Islam. That's the existential threat, not necessarily Islam itself. So right. I really think, and Hitch would talk to anyone. The only person
that's the only point
was Jerry Falwell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really the key is, would they talk to anyone?
Yeah.
And would they be happy to embarrass somebody on the debate floor? And we know that is what brought Hitch more joy than anything,
right.
was embarrassing people on the debate floor.
Right,
Which,
respectfully, even like he
respectfully,
would do
yeah,
it.
fine, yeah,
respectfully too,
in good humor,
Yes.
and that's having the sense of humor about that is so key. And that's why what's happening makes no sense, actually, because literally 4 years ago, Sam deleted Patreon because Carl Benjamin got banned.
Right.
Did he? I did not know that.
That is why.
Yeah, that was the big. Yeah, that was the yep.
I missed that one.
He was literally saying there's no way I'm trusting my financials to a bunch of 20-year-old woke millennials.
He started the cancellation.
He literally started.
I did not know that. How did I miss that?
And then now only 4 years later, because Trump is let back what is he thinking? He needs to be willing to debate people, but here's where his argument really breaks down. All he does is talk about this anymore. It's like on almost every podcast, he's talking about Elon, Twitter. He's talking about Trump constantly. It's like, if you actually don't want to participate in those people, then actually shut up about it and don't talk about it. Because otherwise it's being inconsistent to say, oh, I won't go talk to them to bring attention to their ideas, but yet I'll bring attention to their ideas all day long.
Yeah.
So,
but I guess would you talk to the devil? If you believe the devil was real, would you have a conversation with him? Yeah. And I think that Harris literally believes that these people are existential threats.
Yeah, I actually, I would say I actually did, pitch Sam's people an event years ago. This was like 3-4 years ago, whatever the case was, and Carl was there, and a couple other people, and of course I got a no. But we, with whatever event we have one coming up, we can't talk too much about it. But wouldn't it be great, Bill, to like invite him?
I would love that. I would love that. I
would
I don't think he'll show up. I don't think he'll show up.
I cannot tell you how many Sam Harris lectures I've just binged over the years. I've been a huge influence on me. He's just one of those people that you want to just figure it out so that you can get back on board.
Well, that's what was shitty. Like the whole thing with atheism for me in the beginning was just intellectuals coming together, people coming together, having a discussion about things we can never really prove, but being willing to have the discussion. And that's what it was when I, 2013, years later, that it turned into, the safe spaces and echo chambers, unfortunately. And they didn't invite people anymore. They didn't bring on, and it was always like, we want to have the discussion with the religious people, rip apart their beliefs. But as soon as our beliefs are challenged, no, we can't have those people. It's like, well, you got to have it both ways.
Well, here's the thing too. In order to be consistent, Sam also needs to delete all of his other accounts on every other social network. Because why are you going to single out Twitter as if they're the only one violating your, odd definition of what is acceptable online? Like, guess what? There's plenty of it's not even clear what his actual gripe is specifically, but it's like, okay, Facebook, YouTube, why are you still there? Is it just Elon you don't like? What is the issue?
I think that's what it is.
It sounds like a purity thing to me, doesn't it?
But he's not being pure.
Distance yourself from sin so far.
But
he's not being pure. I'm saying in order to be pure, you must fully exile yourself.
Right. That's a good point.
Right. Well, to be ethically consistent, I agree. But if we look at this through a sin lens, and Elon is an existential threat like Trump, then you want to distance yourself from sin.
No, right. I just think it's bullshit virtue signaling. I think that's what it is. Because Bill's absolutely right. If you're going to do it, go all the way. I always give people credit where they're like, if they're virtue signaling, but they actually do the thing that, they say everyone should be doing. Okay. You're living your life like the way you're preaching or whatever. Great. But yeah, I think
the point is he wants to science the meaning of life, right? He said this a lot of times, that science can maybe actually have voice on
Background.
ethics. And maybe we're proving that can't happen, that he scienced himself into scientism, which is its own kind of have its own faith-based religion and things like, I don't know, peer review.
Well, I know what he would also say.
Infallible and can't be corrupted.
I mean, he would also say that he specifically got rid of Twitter because of how toxic he believes it is compared to other places. Which, okay, got some screaming kids in the background. If you guys can hear, it's music to my ears. But you know, okay, so. Wait, I just lost it.
Scientism is religion. The peer review is not infallible.
Oh, right. But it's like, okay, fine. You want to take a break from Twitter? Like, do it. Like, no, like you should, because Twitter is crazy. But to be consistent across networks, like, okay, do it across all apps,
right?
And go talk to Elon. Like, go hang out with him and do a live stream. Like, you can communicate with. Sam Harris has the ability to go and talk to physically and live stream with anyone he wants on the planet, basically.
Yeah.
So, if your issue is the medium, then, go do it the way you want to do it, but still have the conversation.
Yeah. Lex Friedman's willing to talk to Vladimir Putin, you know?
Exactly. And Lex's attitude is exactly the right attitude. I mean, I want to talk to the worst people in the world. I would do a podcast with a convicted felon, a murderer. Well, a felon, obviously, a murderer. Yeah. Serial killers, the worst people in the world. Of course, you want to talk to them. Why don't you?
You could, you don't have to agree with them. Just that there's gain a certain understanding, even if it's of psychopathy.
Yeah, have you seen Soft White Underbelly?
No.
Oh, okay. You got to check out that channel. They do these interviews with, drug dealers, pimps, murderers, corrupt cops.
Was he just on Rogan?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
This guy, Mark something. It's so good.
Oh yeah, 4.29 million.
He's gotten robbed and assaulted so many times.
He goes down to Skid Row in LA and just grabs people out of the camps and at crazy addiction stories, tons of fentanyl addicts. Like it's so good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
from that.
But yeah, no, thanks, Bill, for coming on. And yeah, we're happy to have it back. Now, this is our first live stream. I think we want to try this more. Unfortunately, I was giving YouTube credit for monetizing people. We're not monetized on YouTube right now. So you can't send any super chats, unfortunately. But yeah, I think we want to try this a little more, and then maybe throw in some Twitter spaces to help out Elon. But any super minds you guys send us, we will post to Twitter. We'll post to all of our socials. So please go on Minds, look up Mythinformed, send us some super minds. You're supporting Minds, which, we've talked about how amazing that is in this episode. And you're supporting the creators. So those
and save the date, 4/15, April 15th. There's something to announce.
Yeah. April 15th. April 15th is going to be crazy town. And then Brian, thank you so much for coming, man. Anything else you want to mention or anywhere you want to send people?
No, just if you want to check out Mythinformed MKE on Twitter, we got that back and we're happy about it. So we're back to finding interesting content that we think people will want to check out.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, guys.